Welcome to Positive Energy TV. I'm your host, Michele Granberg, hypnotherapist, mindset coach, and meditation teacher, michelegranberg.com. This show is a unique dialogue about the great spiritual shift, and my guest is my friend and colleague, Tracy Farquhar. So welcome, Tracy. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm a professional psychic medium. I work out of Southern New Jersey, and I provide psychic readings, mediumship readings that connect with the spirit realm. And I also channel, and I have two published channeled books. The first one is called Frank Talk. The second one was Channeled Messages from Deep Space, which I co-authored with Hay House author Mike Dooley. I also just published a third book, which is called Tarot for Today, which is my own unique take on the tarot deck. So basically, I've been working online and mostly, providing readings, workshops, classes that way since the lockdown. But that's not too different from what I usually do. I usually do a lot of online and sessions. So I teach psychic development as well. And I teach Mike Dooley's program, Law of Attraction program called Infinite Possibilities, among other things.
Many things.
Yes.
Those are many things. And there's even more.
And there's more.
And more to come.
That's right.
I'm glad that you're joining me. I thought it would be a great idea for us to talk to one another in the sense that our talk will help others, right? And enlighten. So our intention is to provide a broader context through which to see and understand a higher spiritual perspective, to understand the current events, the day-to-day happenings we see in the news around us and even in our communities, and a better way of understanding even what we're feeling and what's happening with us, the changes that we feel are happening and the emotions we're feeling every day, to put that into a context that our intention would be to leave people feeling empowered versus scared, right? Because a lot of people are scared, and we want to say that's hopefully one interpretation is to be scared. Another interpretation is to feel comforted by hopefully what we'll share and empowered as well. So let's first start by defining what we mean by when we say the shift, because we hear that term a lot. Is it just sort of something we throw about? Let's bring some meaning to that. So Tracy, for you, when you say the shift, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's a combination of a shift in the cosmos, just in the universal energy that surrounds the earth and is part of the universe in general. I just feel like everything that exists continues to change and elevate in some way. I think it's just a natural process for things to continually change, including us. And yet we have the hardest time with that change, which is why we feel so much fear about it. It's uncomfortable for us to change, but it's a natural process. It's a sense of elevating ourselves from where we are to the next level so that we have a different experience that challenges us in a different way. So the shift is offering us that opportunity. And it's something that, we have experience throughout the history of the world in various ways. We're constantly evolving and moving to the next level. You wouldn't play a video game on level 10 for the rest of your life. You would move up to the next level. You would graduate from high school, you'd graduate from college. And so to me, the shift is a sort of graduation to the next level. So it's the next level of consciousness. It's the next level of opportunity. It's the next level of challenge, because on some level of our being, our soul level, our spirit level, we are ready for that.
I agree with all that. I love that you frame it in the context of just growth. So it's something we really want to embrace versus resist, because you're right, in general, people are habitualized to resist change within ourselves. But when you look back, anytime we felt that uncomfortable feeling, but we allowed ourselves to grow anyway, it's so worth it. When we look at it as an individual, oh my God, I was so resistant to that change in that relationship, or that change, letting go of that belief or letting go of that fear. But then what I did oh boy, thank goodness I'm on the other side of it. And so when we look at, that's not only happening for us, each and every single one of us individually, but we're connected as a collective group of human beings, similar, that we're having this shared earth experience, and we're growing as one collective person, one collective organism. And so shift is simply, of course, it's about evolving, it's about moving into a new phase, but it's more than that, moving into a new version of us. It's even bigger than that as well. It's like, I like what you're sort of saying, like it's an upgrade. You know, it's like on your computer, every once in a while, you have to upgrade your programs, your hardware, your software, or it won't work anymore. It won't function. It won't be compatible. We have new information, new knowledge. We are now like having this sort of download, upload, upgrade to a new version of us. And it's sometimes uncomfortable on the way, you know, to that shift. So, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think it's the discomfort that really is part of it. You know, it's a big part of it. We don't evolve when we're comfortable. You know?
No, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a motivator. Being uncomfortable is a motivator. That's when you look at something, you say, something here has to give and change because I can't continue this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so really looking at how we feel as a microcosm of the macrocosm, and digging into how we feel as there's something there to learn. We also hear this term like awakening. We talk about that a lot, becoming enlightened, becoming more evolved, becoming awakened. And there's no one way of looking at that. Of course, spiritual traditions have always talked about this. But do we mean it literally awakening? Like what does that mean? What do you tell people? Is it a literal awakening? Is it a symbolic awakening? Is it both? What is awakening?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's mostly awareness. You know, it's just becoming aware, both of yourself as a full, complete being, as a spiritual being and a human being, and you know the nature of your being and how you fit in with the rest of the universe and the world. It's being aware of the things that need to change. You know, both in your own sphere and in the wider sphere. Being willing to see those things and being willing to do what it takes to, again, like shift into the next level and bring your consciousness up to the level where you are willing to change, where you're willing to open your eyes to some of the things that you may not want to see, but that you need to acknowledge so that you can move through it, move past it, and allow it to inspire your growth.
Yeah, I love that. So awareness is everything, right? Awareness is, well, there still needs to be action, but awareness is the precursor to action. You know, when you first become aware of, it's new. Becoming aware of something you weren't aware of before, it's like a heightened sense of attention to that thing that you're now aware of. And so we're saying that each of us go through that all the time, but we're all also at all times going through that together. And awakening is a good term in terms of when we think about sleeping. We're asleep. We're not aware when we're asleep, although we are aware when we're asleep. But that kind of sense, and then waking up to something our eyes are now open to. And we're putting it in a spiritual context, saying we're spiritually awakening, becoming more aware of us as spiritual beings and the potential of us, endlessly awakening and evolving in that way. So let's define consciousness, because I mean, I use that term a lot as a way of talking about sort of the connected intelligence that we all are, connected to a divine intelligence, that we are consciousness, which is sort of another word for awareness. So in case people don't understand that word, how do you define it? What does it mean to you?
I think it's an awareness of spirit. So it's an awareness of our higher self. It's through the higher self, being aware through that energy, rather than necessarily simply being aware through the five senses, which is miraculous in itself, but it's also limited. You know, our awareness through, you know, what we can see and hear and so forth is limited by what our brain can process. Our brain itself is limited by the very matter of its being. There are things we cannot understand. You know, there are programs that we have adopted. There were programs that we came into the incarnation with to keep us alive. And so our that kind of awareness is going to be limited. But, consciousness goes beyond that. And consciousness is simply just knowing something, kind of like intuition. The way I define intuition is knowing something without knowing how you know it. So knowing something without an intellectual knowing. But beyond, it goes beyond what you can perceive.
Mm.
And it's a willingness to go beyond what you can perceive.
Oh.
I also think it's important. It's an important field of study. There's so much that's not known about consciousness in the scientific realm.
Mm.
And in the channeling work that I do, one of the main points that the collective known as Frank has said is that so many advances can be made once science really begins to delve into areas of consciousness and bring that more spiritual study into the scientific study and meld those two things together. And that's when we're really going to understand ourselves, both as a material being and an energetic being.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. You explained it really well so that people can understand it. And so it really is that when we say consciousness, it's not separate from us. Consciousness is the larger aspect of us that, you're right, is beyond the physical senses. So we don't know it. It's a bit of a mystery, only in the sense that we're not currently aware of it or aligned with it in the fullest possible way. But we think of it like a field, almost like the ground of being. It's the ultimate essence of all things, and that in and of itself, it's intelligent. It's wisdom itself, So consciousness is alive, and just as we are alive and intelligent thinking beings in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think that just about everything that exists, probably everything that exists, even the non-sentient things that we encounter, they all have a certain
right
level.
Non-sentient, yes, totally.
Yeah. Because we know that these things are made out of atomic particles, and those atomic particles have to arrange themselves in a certain way to become matter, and so there must be some level of consciousness that tells them how to arrange themselves, and so to me everything has some level of consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's akin to the fact that life keeps on going despite us. We don't have to make it or force it or instruct it. There is an innate aliveness in everything. It's just living on its own, independent. And so what's flowing through that and what informs that and sparks that life is consciousness, that divine, non-physical kind of intelligence. And so when we think about that, that's who we are, and all that we see is consciousness, that nothing isn't consciousness. And we add to that the conversation about vibration and frequency, which I know you teach a lot as very much the foundation for intuitive work, channeling work, which you do, psychic work. So explain, what vibration is and how it relates to the shift that we're talking about, the upgrade.
Yeah, well, what I teach is as the foundation of all of that study is that everything is energy. There's nothing that exists that isn't formed from energy. And so, as I mentioned, everything is made of microscopic atomic particles, which are not even really particles. They're little bits of energy that are vibrating a certain frequency. And so our ability to perceive things with our five senses is based on the frequency of that vibration. So anything that we can perceive with our eyes has to be vibrating at a certain frequency that our eyes can pick up as matter. So the computer that you're looking at right now, those particles are vibrating at a low enough frequency that your eyes can pick it up. Now we know there's lots of other forms of energy that we can't perceive with our eyes because it's vibrating at a frequency we're not able to pick up. We know that the spectrum of light is very long, but there's only a small percentage of that we can perceive because the rest of it's vibrating at a frequency that we can't perceive. Same with sound. So it's the frequency and not the actual sense of, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. We know that there are things that we can't perceive that exist, and so that includes the spirit realm. That includes our own energetic essence, which moves way beyond our physical being. It includes our thoughts. That everything is made of energy, and yet that energy extends beyond the physical matter of it. So the ability to connect with energetic frequency is a natural one. We all have the ability to do that. We do it all the time unconsciously. We sense the energy in a room. We'll use the language that says, oh, you could cut the air with a knife in that room. Well, what does that mean? Is that true? Is that literal? No, we're sensing energy. So we all have that ability. We just talk ourselves out of it, or we get talked out of it as a natural way of being, or something that's just reserved for a select few people. But the ability to connect with higher frequencies, our own consciousness, our own higher selves, the energy of other people, the energy of spirit, angels, source itself, is a natural part of who we are. And so as we work with that and level up, hopefully we will begin to use that to our own advantage more and more. Our ability to really trust our intuition, to trust what we're feeling over what our brain is telling us as a logical, practical, a decision. Of course, we still have to be logical and practical. We still have to use the brain, and it's a miraculous instrument. But we've been taught to use it as the sole source of awareness. So again, bringing the aspect of higher consciousness, intuitive abilities, what I feel is heart-centered awareness into our everyday lives can really enhance our lives, help us to feel more confident in our decision making, and just feel better about ourselves.
Absolutely. There's so many practical applications. I mean, we could really talk about that, but we want people to know that that's what's happening. You're not crazy, people. What you feel like when you feel like crazy, or you feel like you're losing it, you're not. Often it's shifts in your vibration. And so we feel that individually, and that's what's happening collectively. It's a good thing. We're moving towards a permanent, higher vibrational state, and so, this is what we say when we say raise your vibe, is that literally the molecules, the tiniest particles of us are pulsing faster at a higher rate, more intensity to it, and more expansion. So we're really changing our whole makeup, and the result of that is that we start to think differently, and life shows up differently as well. So it's natural.
And I think that shift has a lot to do with what we call the divine feminine energy, and honoring that more.
Yes.
To me, that's what that heart energy is all about. It's the divine feminine. It's nothing to do with gender. It's just a certain type of energy that's more heart-based. It's more connected with feelings, emotions, higher senses, compassion, care. And that has been maligned for so long. And not only maligned, but ridiculed or seen as weakness, that we tend to ignore it, or we see it as a problem. We see emotions as getting in our way instead of using them to our advantage. Again, we can ridicule intuition as just being our imagination, downplay it, because we have been taught to rely solely on our thinking minds. But boy, when we integrate those two things, which I believe is happening, we are seeing the need for more compassion in the world. We're kind of being forced into seeing that right now. There's still going to be people who resist it and see it as weakness, the old paradigm. But so many people are stepping up and standing in that truth, and activating that part of themselves, that as a collective, we are influencing this shift with that, intention.
I love it, because really armed with that knowledge, we can be more deliberate about it, be more intentional about it, since we know, my vibration is shifting, and am I resisting? And one way not to resist it is to intend not to resist and to intend to let it flow and to open the heart. And I love, you're right, we're up until now sort of raised to where emotions are not valued, and emotions, higher level emotions are higher vibrations. So it's part of breaking through the old denser vibrations. And would you say that people talk about everything speeding up? But I've heard people say that for as long as I can remember almost, and the quickening and everything speeding up, maybe I don't know if there's really, we put our finger on it and measure it in terms of how fast it's all going, but it certainly has an appearance that there's an intensification, and that it's almost hard to keep up with, synchronicities more synchronicity. That's one way it shows up. We see all these synchronicities more and more. It seems that it's more and more, right? And it just seems like life is playing out this shift, like right here in our face, more and more. Is that, what do you think? Is that all part of this quickening, or everything speeding up, or are we just more awake and aware, like we said?
Yeah, well, time is an awareness, solely an awareness anyway, and so, the concept that blows our minds because we can't wrap our minds around it is the fact that there really is no time and space. And, we can't in any way imagine how that would be. So time is all about awareness. And, we all experience that quickening of time. They'll say, time flies when you're having fun. And, when you're engaged in something, when you're concentrated, or, when you're really enjoying something, it does seem like time goes faster. And when you're doing something that's not so enjoyable, or you're waiting for something, it's a perception. So it makes sense that we would perceive these times as quickening. I also kind of feel that it may be a little gift from the universe to help us get through these really challenging times. Perhaps we're getting that little boost from the universe to shift our awareness so that it does appear to be going more quickly, so that
a little kick in the pants.
Yeah. Right. So we're not really engaged as much in the uncomfortable feeling, as being interminable. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel when it feels like time is going faster. That feels logical to me, but it has been kind of surprising that even in this time of lockdown that we've experienced, where you would expect the days to feel like they're going really slowly, if you're not having as much to do. Everybody I've talked to has said these days are just flying by. I wake up, I do a few things, and then it's dark out. What is happening? I've had so many people, say that. So yeah, there's absolutely something to it. And I think, again, if there's something to it and it's happening, it must be in our favor in some way.
That's right. It's all in how you look at it, how you choose to harness it. And this is really calling to us to use all the tools that we know, or learn new ones, and all the awareness and all the everything. This is the time to begin to put all that into practice. And I love the reminder about, that time and space really are fluid. They really are illusions, but let's optimize those illusions, in some self-serving, positive self-serving way. And that often the universe, which is that higher aspect of us, provides these opportunities. Sometimes it needs to sort of provide a wake-up call, and so when we look at on that bigger, it's a shock to the system, and sometimes we need a shock to the system to reboot, like you say, and relook and get us to the next level, a different vantage point, a different high. Without that, just one mechanism for that to occur, right? That's a very positive way of looking at it.
Yeah, which always helps.
Yeah. So one thing we do see a lot of right now, that I'm seeing, and everybody I believe is seeing, is a lot of death and illness. I'm putting them sort of in the same category, although they're different, and a lot of hate and anger, which I will also say there's a lot of just loathing in there, and separation and discrimination, sort of all in the fear. It's all fear. over there. And fear is also related to what I'm seeing, unless, you know, it's what's coming into my reality as more people dying and more people getting sick, but not just, yes, the pandemic, yes, COVID, of course, that's almost like, well, yeah, that's so obvious. But even before that, and in addition to that, I'm finding out all the time, hearing about young people, people you wouldn't expect. They're leaving this plane, they're dying, right? And people are getting ill and dying, or just getting ill of something. So as we try to put that into a, you know, we are compassionate about that. We have empathy for that, but to put it into some broader context, not to minimize it, but to look at it, do you see that, and why? And I believe it's directly related to this shift. It's, I don't know, I'm not gonna say it's necessary or has to happen or it's essential per se, but it is a way to facilitate the shift, maybe less energies here on the planet, more higher vibrational energies when we die. So many reasons, right? So let's talk about those, you know, let's talk about death and illness from the spiritual.
Yeah. Well, in the work that I do, you know, I talk to dead people all the time.
Well, they must not be gone. They're not dead.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but
they're still talking.
Yeah, exactly. They have not ceased to exist. And what has come through that work, both in the mediumship work and the channeling, is the fact that, you know, our souls, our spirits, need to agree to our death, the timing of it, and how. There is no way that our lives can really be taken away from us without our consent. You know, I really strongly believe that. And that can be very difficult for people to accept, especially if you see someone who dies young or tragically or unexpectedly. You know, of course, you're going to view that through the lens of your own grief, which is, you know, it's going to be very difficult to accept that that person left because that's when they needed to go. But inevitably, spirit will tell me that it was just time for me to go. You know, I can't explain it any more than that. But, you know, there can be lots of reasons. Often the shorter lives have a greater impact on the people who knew them. They leave a stronger legacy. They leave, you know, a legacy of, you know, whatever talents, gifts that they offered to the world. Sometimes I feel they're called to higher work in the spirit realm. You know, I don't think we're necessarily resting in peace on the other side. You know, I think we're active and productive, and, you know, yeah, we're still learning and growing, and, you know, we're still participating in existence in some way. So, you know, I sometimes get from spirit that they're employed, you know, they're doing things, and that it's a higher calling, and it was something that they needed to do from that realm that they couldn't accomplish.
They've gotten a pay raise.
Right.
They've got a promotion.
Right. And it would make sense, especially at this time of great shift, that perhaps, you know, whatever experience they had in this realm is going to inform their spirits and what now the spirit knows that this realm needs right now, the kind of support and guidance, you know, that they can afford to the people who are going through this stuff. You know, I mean, this is, you know, I haven't had any spirit actually tell me that verbatim, but just from what I know, it feels right. That doesn't mean that we don't miss them. Like you said, you know, we want to honor the grief that comes with losing a loved one. But I think it is helpful to embrace the idea that they agreed to go on a soul level at that time, perhaps even before they came here. And we may be one of those things that we are just not capable of understanding because we have a limited perception of what life is, and because we're programmed in a way that wants us to avoid death at all costs. So of course death is going to be seen as the ultimate tragedy. We so need more dialogue around the idea of death. It really is something that we get very little support in. very little education in. And so there's so much fear around it. I think that fear kind of integrates into all aspects of our lives. And I think if we could learn better ways to deal with death, that it would really change the way we live.
Yeah.
So I think there are some conversations that we need to have around that as we shift into higher consciousness here.
Yeah. So again, maybe that's the opportunity that's presenting itself right now, and as part of the why, the purpose and the meaning, in seeing death around us. And, I don't want to say it's becoming normalized, but it's because it's really not. But it definitely presents itself to make us relook. And so when we look at it from the soul's perspective, and when you add the perspective of free will and choice, that's not decided for us, it's decided by us. Choosing, maybe not exactly when or exactly how, it's not to the minute and to the exact, that's not what we're saying. That's still open for free will and choice as we go, but potentially as the soul blueprints a life, maybe laying out some potential exit points in probable, possible ways, and letting that unfold and lay itself out in such a way that you get to decide what will best serve, and there's no right or wrong or judgment in all of that. So now people might be going, wait a minute, right? You mean, my son or my daughter or my grandmother or grandfather who has recently passed had everything to do with that happening? And sometimes people will interpret it like there's blame or guilt around all of that, and it's really quite the opposite, in terms of what we're saying. Often it is from a space of unconditional love that souls will choose even to exit, right? Sometimes you're right, it's for the greater good, the greater good of their small unit and the greater good, in some way as well. And you're right, it's gonna bring the dialogue about life after death, about souls, the eternalness of souls. It's gonna bring that more to the forefront. So you agree with that? Yes. And what about illness though? It's the same conversation. Like, why are more people manifesting illness? What's the spiritual purpose? There's many, of course.
Well, again, it's, I feel that, again, we evolve through different levels of existence. And I think the more evolved the spirit is, the more challenging the life experiences that they will choose to incarnate into. So again, it's like, okay, I dealt with that. All right, I learned this there. Now I want to
level of lesson.
Yeah. Right, let's move up the challenge here. Right. Let's see what I can do with this now. Let's see what I can do with illness. Let's see what I can do with handicap. Let's see what I can do with, mental challenges, psychological challenges, family challenges. Let's see what I can do with being profoundly disabled. Okay, again, this might sound kind of trite to talk about it that way, but, if you have ever looked into the eyes of someone who has a physical disability, you can see the wisdom there. You can feel their love. And sometimes they just seem like, beacons of love that are here in this world. To me, that's a highly evolved soul that has chosen the supreme challenge, because they want to see what they can do with it. They want to see how that challenge can influence everyone who comes into contact with them. And so if you choose an illness, okay, that not only affects your life, but it affects all the people around you. Now, you might think that that's a negative effect. And yes, it does cause challenge. It causes grief even before the person passes. But grief can teach us things. Grief can actually inspire compassion for other people. There are those emotions that we tend to want to avoid, that we see as negative, are sometimes the things that really inspire us toward different actions and inspire us to want to elevate other people who are going through similar challenges. So it's not just the person who came into the incarnation and experienced illness who made those choices. It's also all the people around them who also, chose this incarnation where they are connected to this person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was a choice as well. And we hear all kinds of terms like soul agreements and soul contracts, and it's not as finite as that or exact as that. But again, if people are in your life, they're in your life for a reason. And often you can really tell by the level of significance in the roles that they're playing with one another, even when it's negative, so to speak, or positive. And all of it, this is really, if you're here listening to us right now and you're here on earth right now, you're part of this. You're not left out of this. This is like the hero's journey. It's not for the lighthearted. If you're here, it's for the bold. You are bold, even if you don't feel bold. You're absolutely bold, by virtue of being here. But I like it all circles back to the main lesson, sort of, which is about unconditional love and compassion. Those are the highest forms, the highest vibrations. It is somehow and coming back to that, where we might have forgotten that or been disconnected to that.
Mm-hmm. I think we look for different ways to express that in the different ways that we choose to come in. How am I going to experience unconditional love when I have, this kind of challenge, this kind of challenging person in my life, or this challenging health issue? How am I going to experience that now? I think that we come here for the opportunity to have an adventure and have an experience that can teach us things, that can add something to our soul being. And again, because in the human mind, we categorize things as good experiences and bad experiences. We can't even fathom why somebody will come and choose so-called bad experiences. And people will often say that to me. Well, how did this person choose that life? Why would they choose that? Well, they must have thought that they would get something out of it.
Yeah. It may be the fast track. We might see it as, oh, it's a bad thing, but maybe it's they're skipping, they're advancing themselves a little more quickly, so to speak, through contrast, through experiencing the opposite of love. How better to learn love? By experiencing the opposite of inclusion, by experiencing the opposite of peace, learning through opposites in that way. And just, we want people to know it is not a punishment, and it is not something's wrong. Or people always say, I want to make sure I'm on my path. I'm not on my path. People say, well, if I had $1, right, I'm off my path. And you try to say, but they are only hear it if they're really ready to hear it. You're never off your path. There's different avenues and routes, and you can course correct it. You can take the short route or you can take the highway, but it's ultimately all leading you. If you follow your intuition, you get there faster, so to speak. Anyway, that'll always guide you. It's your inner guidance GPS system that's right there, but there's no right or wrong in the eyes of the universe. So sometimes when things intensify, it means you found a shortcut,
Right. And what you said in the beginning about how we are microcosms of the whole, you can see what you just said happening in the collective right now. We are being supremely challenged right now, because that supreme challenge is leading to an even greater shift of consciousness. So the outcome, the potential of this is so much greater than the pain of it.
Right.
But we can't see that when we're in it because it's right here.
Can't see the forest for the trees.
Right. And so we just have to be in it and just hold that as a possibility, as a potential. What if this is leading to the best possible world there could be at this time?
I think that's where trust and faith, a little trust goes a long way. A little faith goes a long way. When we say we want to trust the universe, this is, hold space for that. Hang in there. For that. You're right. When we look at the world as a mirror, for individually and collectively, it's a big mirror. There's a big drama playing itself out. And again, we're not minimizing it, but it is doing that for us to see us. And then we get to say, I'm not okay with that, or that's not the best way, or we can just do better than that. But we have to see it as this. Sometimes we don't, we're sort of numb to it. So it gets louder and it gets more intense, just like a movie, you know, when the bombs are going off and they're like, oh, what's happening in this movie, right? It's getting us to pay attention. So one of the things that, you know, we're in current events currently, as we talk today, is really playing itself out, is we're seeing a lot of hatred and anger, people against people, people hurting other people, people being violent even to the extreme of physically hurting them, as well as there's been a lot of hurting with words that has been going on for a while, using words as weapons, you know, put more just to the extreme that it seems that we've never seen before. Either that, or again, we're pushing it up to the surface so we can not have it lurking below, so that we can change it, you know. So, you know, absolutely, that's a part of it. And there's lots of other reasons people will point to in terms of the changes in our society and technology and all of these kinds of things. But from the bigger sort of, you know, spiritual perspective, with everything circling back to love and compassion, where do you see this time?
Well, you know, we talked about awareness and awakening. I think all of that already existed. You know, it's always existed. You know, the sense of blaming others, judging others. You know, we all have the shadow parts of ourselves. They exist in all of us. It's just a matter of what you choose to do with them. And I feel like there's been a lot of denial for a long time of those things. There's been blindness because we choose not to see it. You know, we only want to see what's good, what we label as good. And so these things have been simmering under the surface, and we haven't been pushed to do anything about it because, well, you know, we give power to other people. Oh, they'll take care of it. You know, this person with this title, this sense of power, they'll take care of it. I'm just a small puny human. What can I do? You know? And now we're faced with the opportunity to look and say, yeah, they're not doing such a great job. So maybe I can do something. Maybe I can stand up. Maybe I can really be a leader in myself. Again, a leveling up of how we see ourselves as powerful beings. So sometimes it takes having that, you know, that hatred, that negative energy right in your face before you pay attention to it. You know, it's like that, you know, to me, in our own the personal spheres, you know, we get that little tap on the shoulder from the universe, and our intuition. You know, something might feel a little uncomfortable in our lives, and we'll say, it's not that bad. I'll just stick with it because I don't want to make change. And then you get a little shove and something really goes awry. And usually we will still say, it's not bad enough yet for me to have to stand up and make the change, because again, we don't like change. Well, eventually you're going to have the rug pulled out from under you. And that's where we are, you know, because now you're going to pay attention. Now you're going to really stand, you have the opportunity to pay attention, to stand in your truth, speak up, and embrace the idea of change, because that's what it takes. And when you know, everybody who's watching this, I'm sure, can think of a time in your life where this has played out for you, you know, where you know, you intuitively knew that something had to change, and yet you really had to be pushed to the limit in order to embrace that change. So again, it's not that the hatred is now, you know, coming out of nowhere. It's always been there. It's not that the racism, you know, is new. This is old stuff. And if we're going to elevate, we've got to work on those things. You know, this is part of our evolution, is to work on the stuff that holds us in a lower vibration. And, you know, that's why it's so many of us are going, oh no, that's not acceptable anymore. You know, I'm ready to elevate to something better. And again, there's going to be the ones who cling to it just because it's what they know and what they're used to and what they were taught. And that's just the way it's always been. So just leave it the way it is. Again, every every big shift in our world has had that energy around it. You know, the small ones and the big ones. So again, it can be something as we bring awareness to it. And again, as we bring in the awareness of our own intuition a little bit higher, maybe we won't have to be pushed to this limit quite so much. Maybe we'll listen to the tap on the shoulder, to that little inner voice that says, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to elevate. It's time to, you know, go to the next level here. Don't resist so much. So you don't have to have the cosmic 2x4 upside the head this time. You know?
Cosmic 2x4. Ouch. It's true. It feels like wow, that got me. Woo, that got me.
Right.
Yeah. I hope that people listening will choose, because it's just 1-2 people choose to look at it as an opportunity, you know, to use it to say, to hold a mirror to themselves in a non-judgmental way and say, I'm not a victim here. I'm not to blame. It's not that one person or 2 people or a bunch of people are at fault, but the opportunity here is to take responsibility for ourselves, just more responsibility, and to really really explore that. And so, you know, really the fact that COVID is side by side on the timeline with the rise in hatred, it's always been there, as you said, it's true, but the more awareness being spotlighted on both this illness and how we're treating each other or not treating each other during this time, as well as the juxtaposition of the rise in racism, all of it pointing to, man, boy, there must be tons of opportunities here for us to choose again, to choose differently, you know, to approach this, because the same old default automated way of being might be, I'm going to go hide, I'm going to go run, I'm going to keep this in the shadows, I'm just going to keep feeding the fear. Or again, let's take this wake-up call and wake up, so that we don't keep repeating it or it doesn't get even more intense. So the wake-up call would be, there's no one way to perceive this. There's, in the spectrum of positive possibilities, compassion, yeah, hello, empathy, yeah, hello, walking in another's shoes, hello, inclusion and connectedness, and seeing beyond skin and culture, and seeing beyond religion and race and tradition, and developing love for our fellow man, woman, child, all of that. This is a fantastic opportunity. Don't miss it. I think it's going to keep coming anyway, but why not jump on now, right now? Do you see there's some immediacy? Yes?
Yeah. Yeah. So I did a channeling session the other day, and one of the best things out of it, I think, was when the collective known as Frank said, the revolution is our evolution.
Oh, I love that. The revolution. Say that again. The revolution is our evolution?
It's our evolution.
Yeah. This is it, right? Right?
You did a lot of this in that session as well. It's like,
that's
representing that.
Yeah.
You know, the defiance against that which threatens to hold us back. You know, it's not so much defiance of each other, it's defiance of our own consciousness, that you know, defiance of our own thought process that's holding our consciousness back, to put it that way, right? And that's not a bad thing. No,
this is a good thing. It's a breakthrough, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to buy into what everybody says, or what's always been said, or the way just because it's always been that way doesn't mean it's going to continue, or it has to continue. But it takes a few of us to begin to sort of build up the fan base for that, the energy and the shifting around that. It's a movement. That's what we want to see. This is a movement that is moving. It's a wave. So we want to ride that wave, right? And continue it. Do you want to be part of it, or do you want to resist it? Really is part of the question, you know?
Yep. Either way, you're participating. You can't escape it.
You can't opt out. It's not,
Right.
it's not optional. These lessons are not forced upon us. They're desired by us because we want to grow. So it's all about how much we resist. So let's maybe just sort of talk, in starting to close, about what we want people to remember most, or what they can do. What are some things they can do with this knowledge on a day-to-day basis?
Mhm. Well, I think ask yourself the questions, set intentions for what you want to experience. Ask what energy you're bringing into your life and your situation rather than what life has to bring to you as much, there's always going to be things that we can't control out there, but we always have the choice of what kind of energy we want to bring into that situation and how we want to deal with it, how we want to respond to it. Are you reacting out of old habits of reaction, or are you choosing an elevated response? Is that count to 10, that old adage about count to 10 when you feel angry? That's great advice. If we take that pause, which again, we had the huge pause with the quarantine, no coincidence there, that was allowing us to reconfigure, recenter, take a breath.
Collective breath.
Uh-huh.
And interesting, one of the symptoms of, unfortunately, the
Yes.
virus was people literally could not breathe.
Yes, and the situation of Black Lives Matter right now, precipitated by a man saying, "I can't breathe."
I can't breathe. Yeah.
So, this is a time to breathe, and it's a time to pause. It's a time to reflect. How can I be my best self, both in service to my own world and in service, to the greater world? What energy do I want to bring into my life and bring into my outer life? How do I want my life to go? How would I like to see the world evolve? Starting to get into that thought pattern instead of, I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. Now, we do need to stand up for truth by saying, I don't want something. But eventually we want to start shifting our vision over to here and say, okay, yeah, so instead of that, I want something that feels like this. And I can see it and I can feel it and I can imagine it. And it's going to feel so good when it comes. And I can't wait to see what comes out of all of this. So if we can shift that fear and stress and exhaustion from everything that's happening into a little bit of anticipation for the lifting. Right now, at least in New Jersey, some of the regulations and the quarantines are lifting now. What does that feel like? It feels like a sense of relief. Okay, well, that feels good. I want more of that. Okay, so, kind of shifting into the possibilities, the potential, and imagining it. And then, again, asking yourself, what energy can I bring to this situation? Maybe you are inspired to write. Maybe you're inspired to protest. Maybe you're inspired to just pray or meditate. Whatever it is, it's your energetic participation that you get to choose. And, it's all valuable.
Absolutely. So beautiful. And so we encourage people to take on this time as a challenge and be deliberate about it in that way, to learn to quiet your mind perhaps and take internal pauses, to learn to have tools for raising your vibration, or you're right, to find a path of service. All of these are the opportunities that are here in front of us. And we're hoping that out of this conversation, people are pausing right now, finding their center. And it's really okay to notice what resonates and what doesn't resonate. And you can put aside that which doesn't resonate. But if some of this does resonate, that's occurring for a reason. Pay attention to that and do something. Take some inspired action from here, so that we really want you to know that none of this is happening to you. It's happening for you. It's happening by us together. This is something we may have all decided was written in our stars that we put in there to occur. And so don't panic. People, don't panic. Don't, stay tuned.
Also, elevate your self-care right now.
Elevate your self-care. Yeah, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And,
right.
Our hearts go out in light and love to those who are hurting right now. And so again, whatever you're called to do, whether it's to help or whether it's a time just to go inside and just be, it's all good, but just be comforted that there is a greater process at work in all this. So Tracy, thank you so much for all the unique and uncommon perspectives that you have shared Now, your website is tracyfarquhar.com, is it not?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. So we want people to go to your website, tracyfarquhar.com, and find out more about your private readings and your group offerings. So we hope people will do that today. My website is michellegranberg.com. People can find out about the things that I do one-on-one, virtually, or in my Princeton office, and some group offerings as well. And I have a television show that's archived on Vimeo and YouTube and broadcast on Princeton Community Television. People can reach out to me if they want more information about that. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you so much.